Hello. This short introduction to the slides on the Phoenix case study. I'm gonna explain a little bit do a small walk through the slides so that you can read the slides afterwards and we can discuss it in the practical class. But the idea is just to exemplify with the Phoenix case study a little bit how do you go from the business problem to the architectural tactics and design, and explain as well a little bit the rationale behind Phoenix. Okay, so the way this presentation is structured, first, basically we define what is a Phoenix. Okay, so basically, but that's what you already know. So that's the system of Technico that use and actually today's in other schools. So, but the problem now then is to discuss what are the requirements that we need in Phoenix, and to understand the requirements we need, basically look at the business problem. And what you're going to find inside these slides related with the business problem was the context of development of the system in 2002, 2001, where you have an old system in COBOL that was developed in-house. And then there was a discussion about whether you should develop a system in-house or outsourced. And basically, the problem with these type of systems that you develop in-house is that after a while, if your organization is not actually an organization that develops software, and so what happens is that the system gets old in some sense, and the maintenance of the system gets more expensive, and there are a lot of problems like the technology gets obsolete. So people don't want to program in COBOL anymore. Although when the system was designed and implemented the first time, it was really everybody would love to work in that system. But after 20 years or so, no one wants to work in the system anymore. And so you have a problem with the resources. You don't have resources. You depend on just a couple of people, and then this becomes a problem how to manage this. And that was the problem we faced by then. And the idea is that then we just try to understand how can we find a solution. Of course, the solution can be to do outsource, but so when you have a problem and before you design a system or an architecture for that system, you need to define a business case. And actually we defined the business case. And the business case was, okay, to look at the problem from a different point of view. So instead of saying that, okay, make no sense to develop software in an organization which goal is not to develop software, you say, okay, but in Technic actually you have, we teach how to do software. We do research in terms of research that can contribute to new things in software. We do technology transfer, and actually these are the goals of the university. Okay, and if you can put these goals together with the goal of the system, probably you can then doing in-house development of the system does not become something that make no sense, because then developing the Phoenix system inside Technic can be part of the business. And that's what you're going to find in this business case, is the idea that, okay, if I, for instance, use the system in classes to teach, okay, so the students, instead of playing with toy examples, they can use a real system like a doctor that in a hospital that actually learn with real patients, okay. And if, for instance, one of the problems, the system can become obsolete after years. But if you do research on the system, such that you can actually, with time, with the results of the research, you use new ideas, you incorporate new ideas into the system, new technologies into the system, so the system do not become obsolete anymore. And for instance, if you use the system to teach, another thing that is going to happen is that actually you have a lot of students that know how to work on this software. So you don't have this you don't depend only on one person or two that know the system, that knows the system, okay. And that's what you're going to see around this business case, okay. So we actually design this business case and say, okay, let's look at a development of a system for the school from this perspective, and from this business space we say, okay, how can we make the development of software part of the core, okay, of the business core of Technic, and that's the main idea. So then that now that we have a business case, so which quality should support the business case, and then what you're going to see in these slides is basically, once you have the business case, you start defining business goals, okay, and you start decomposing these business goals in order to start to identify scenarios, and then you do the iterative process where you just find more scenarios, and from more scenarios you start designing the architecture, and as you start designing the architecture, you identify new types of scenarios, and that's what you're going to read in these in these slides. Okay, so we'll find we will discover that, for instance, we have the set of goals. Okay, for instance, what is the relevance of this set of goals? For instance, you want to have open source code, should be a goal because you want to use the system to teach in class, so it should be open source. Everybody has access to the code. Okay, for instance, the development should not be expensive because basically especially in 2001, 2002, developers make a lot of money. So how can you? It was difficult for the school compete with the best human resources. So how can you deal with it? So how can you motivate people to work in the system? People that have quality, probably just because it's something new, it's something that you actually use the newest technologies, and you can experiment with things. Okay, so if you pick these aspects that are common in the academic context, where you actually go through innovation and you try to do new things. So this can be nice for people that want, at least for a period of time, to work in the system. But we'll see how these type of goals will become part of the architecture, and will become part first of scenarios. So will in some sense will result in scenarios, and from the scenarios always start designing the architecture. Okay, so that's the for instance an application for everybody. So that's the business goal, and from this goal we define, okay, you define a business scenarios. The school management intends that all the members of the schools, okay, and by doing this, for instance, can use the system efficiently without requiring installation of software or long learning period. So from this business scenario, actually we'll get other more concrete scenarios, actually quality scenarios, and we'll identify, for instance, conditions like is going to be constraints, like is going to be a web application, but you also get something like modifiability, okay, scenarios, and so that's we'll see this process where you keep decomposing the system, okay, and basically addressing each one of the goals by decomposing the business, sorry, decomposing the business scenarios into more concrete attributes, quality attribute scenarios, okay, and the final part is a part where basically we look at Phoenix architecture as an influence cycle, and we'll see basically how by developing this architecture has impact on the future architectures of the system. And here we can discuss a little bit the different architectures and different phases. Probably I can say that at least I can see different architectures in the development of the system. The first one, the second one, and the third one, probably now more. But this is related with this influence cycle, that by developing a system according to an architecture, experimenting from it, getting results from it, it just gives you feedback to the redesign of the system. And this idea that you keep redesigning a system. Okay, so read the slides according to this short introduction that I've provided, and then let's discuss it in class. And I think it's a good example how to go from a business problem to a description of an architecture that fulfills uh, or that actually solves a business case that we identify, but also identify from the business problem, but also the identification of the business case is interesting. Okay, and then we can also relate with the student. Okay, enjoy.